Breakfast with Bobby. We are back. +1. Tile's still screwed up. Sorry, guys. In my little brother's kitchen again. Feels good to be back to a place of normalcy. Jesus, I just apparently caught rapid onset crap in throat. That's great. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I've been hanging out at my other brother's place for the last 4 or 5 days. He was out of town on vacation, and we have some dogs out there that we are in the process of getting started into breeding. And well, when you've got 5 dogs, 5 three, four, yep, 5 dogs. No, 3, 4, 6 dogs, and 4 of them, excuse me, Jesus, 3 of the females and 1 of the males are going to be utilized for breeding. You got to keep an eye on them, especially when your girls are in heat. So he went on vacation, and I went and hung out in the middle of the woods in his house, trained, did my work. Life was great. So I'm back to base now. Sorry for the roundabout. What we've got going on today, I want to talk about bands and overhead pressing. All right, no, I thought this might be a really hot pan. It's too hot. I don't want to burn myself. Bands and overhead pressing. So accommodating resistance, I love accommodating resistance. I haven't used a lot of it lately. I'm getting back into it, so more now than I have been recently, at least. I'm getting back into it, and I tend to stick with bands. I don't really like chains. They look cooler, I give you that. They do look cooler, and honestly, they make me feel better when I do cool things with them, like kind of inside, nice little dopamine monkey push. However, the issue I run into with chains is they just take so darn long to set up, and they are expensive. Bands aren't cheap either, but chains are expensive. The next thing I've noticed with chains is that I spend a lot more time trying to get them to where I need them to be and putting them away than I do with the bands, where I can just leave those attached to the bottom of the rack and just walk away. And it's my, it's there's 3 of us that train in that gym, so it really doesn't, things like that really don't matter at our place. So the next reason I prefer, for overhead at least, chains, or I prefer bands over chains, is because when you get overhead, stability's a thing, and you start getting tired and things start shaking around. Well, if you have something hanging from the bar, from overhead, and it's hanging down low to ground, as that bar starts to move and shake, that energy is going to carry down and shake through the chains, and it's just going to be like an endless cycle of momentum. And it's just an added, you could argue, oh yeah, bro, it's for stabilization, but if I'm going to do that, there are other things I'm going to do that are significantly safer if I'm really trying to work on stabilization, or however you want to say that. So that, and with chains as well, it's, if you lose a chain, they're expensive, and you're going to lose stuff. Things are going to get pulled apart. Obviously, you're not pulling a chain apart, but you're going to lose stuff in your home gym. Things are going to disappear, and I just have always felt that bands were the easiest thing to replace. Just as well, in terms of measuring what like their turnover into the bar is, I will say I think chains are a lot easier, because you can weigh the chain, and then you can look at how many links are making contact with the ground when the bar is at one position versus being at the top of the position, right? And that tells you how much of the chain you're actually moving. So I will say chains are kind of easier to calculate resistance if you really want to, but I'm going to be honest, I stopped doing that kind of thing a long time ago, and I just agree on an intensity scale, and I know what bands and what chains provide that intensity. And when the load gets to a certain point that I've already kind of predetermined in my head, then the next band goes on or the next band comes off. It's really it's that simple. And I've noticed that a lot of the really good powerlifters, not myself, not a powerlifter, at least anymore. I've noticed a lot of them is kind of the same, where even if you hear Dave Tate talk about band tension back in the day when they were at Westside, he'll say, man, what was that? It was estimate to be this, because they had estimates of what these bands were supposed to be, but you never really heard them say it was definitively this. So you can get the device and measure. It just takes time. Bands lose tension over time, obviously. No 2 bands are going to be exactly alike. So there are going to be certain inaccuracies with them, but all in all, as an efficient tool, I feel like the band just wins. I also feel like the band does a better job at teaching you to be fast and stable, versus, like I said, if you're working with chains and you get a little wonky, and depending on your setup, obviously, it carries down that chain, and it becomes more of a stabilization thing than a speed thing or reaction thing. So I don't know, not so much my cup of tea with chains. I prefer bands. Now, if you look at my Instagram, I have been doing something different lately, though. I've been doing a overhead, it's not a overhead squat. I won't call it an overhead squat. Instead, I'm pressing the band overhead, and I'm attempting to fortify that lockout position. So I've got a light plate load on a heavy axle with small to medium-ish bands, blues, and I'll get overhead and I'll work a dip, and I'll dip down as far as what I believe my push press dip would be, and I'll hit a pause. And really, like I said, all I'm trying to do is the moment I lean forward, or if I start allowing myself to get pulled forward out of position, the bands let me know. And then it's a fight back into position. So I'm really just kind of fortifying myself from the neck down in my lockout position with that. Excuse me. Ooh, sorry guys, that was a rough one. So hopefully that makes, I've seen a few people calling that, oh, Bobby's doing banded overhead squats. I will not call that an overhead squat because I feel like that's just offensive to the people who actually do overhead squats. So that's what that is. So bands versus chains, I'm gonna go with bands. The next thing I want to have a discussion over, and I'm running into this with clients, and I'm lucky that all of my clients are super, super, super receptive when I tell them things. And even, we go through phases where it's kind of like, hey, like we're going to be super friendly, and, hey man, you had a failure. That's okay. We're rolling into next week. Screw this last week. Don't worry about it. We're going to have those. But every now and then you got to have a hard conversation where you just got to kind of look at them and say, hey, like, I can appreciate, so much is going well, but this thing right here is doing pretty poorly compared to what you're actually capable of. And those conversations are always really, really difficult. And I've noticed a trend amongst the fitness community and the weight loss community. And they're putting a huge emphasis on mental health, which I am a huge fan of. I have certainly struggled with my own over the years, and some days still do. So I'm not against any group of individuals going, hey, this part matters. We need to pay attention to this because people are getting hurt. And I do believe there's a certain, there's a relationship between mental health and fitness that needs to be present. And unfortunately, at the elite level, myself included, in any capacity, health really isn't a concern, and it does become kind of toxic when you think about what you're doing and what you have to do. But it used to be that we would see people who were overweight or needed to train, and for whatever reason, and they would go train, and it would be like, oh, I'm feeling mentally, I feel clear, I feel better, and it's like, okay, cool, we're doing all these great things. But now I'm starting to hear that people, they want to work on their mental health and get that in check before they go try and go to the gym or start taking bigger steps towards their physical health. Over the last, I'd say 8 to 10 years, we've literally flipped. It would be somebody had poor mental health. We need to get you outside. We need to go do some stuff. Let's get you confident in your body. Let's get a little bit healthier. Let's lose some weight. Okay, that was the recommendation. And now we're seeing a lot of the recommendation being, hey, mentally, I'm in the best place I've ever been, but, physically, I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to. I've been enjoying my food and treating myself because I'm working hard and I feel good with the person that I am. Guys, that's cope. It is. Now, should everyone take the same road to the end, or take the same road to the end of the same race? No, you can't, because there have definitely been situations, and I've worked with a few clients, where we did have to discuss, hey, what's really going on here? Why can't you say no to the food? What's happening? And we have to talk about it, and things get in depth, and I'm not a therapist, but I just ask some really basic questions and maybe help them make some real basic connections and light bulbs kick on. That's all. You ask the right questions. I don't diagnose. I don't tell them why they feel the way they do. I simply say, hey, from my personal experience, this is what I found of why I feel the way I do, and I feel a similar way to you. And that usually opens up a bunch of doors. However, I think we need to go ahead and realize that there is an element of both fitness and non-fitness, however you want to call that, that is in fact self-harm. It's 100%. So and I get this is, you guys, somebody's going to flip this video on me and do one on Bobby Thompson and people like me, and it's going to be probably a little hurtful to see, but I look forward to it. However, if it's, hey, I'm feeling really good, my mental health is where it needs to be, okay, that's great, but you gained 5 pounds, or you haven't been training, or, you tell me how great life feels, but then we do our actual check-ins on the data portion of what I need, and nothing's matching, nothing's making sense. Guys, that is self-harm. 100% that is self-harm. If you are sabotaging your long-term physical well-being for your short-term mental well-being, which I'm also going to say, I don't believe there's any short-term mental well-being. I believe it's an all or not long ball game with fitness, with mental health, which means you're going to go through ebbs and flows of where you're not so healthy in either one or the other. But as long as at the end I am better off than when I started, it's worth whatever little bit of suffering and or trauma or not so great life moments that may occur. And that used to be a common theme you saw in the world of fitness. Like, this sucks today, I'm by myself, I'm suffering, but it's not going to be that way. Like, this is going to give me confidence, it's going to open doors for me. And it does that for everyone who truly embraces it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go get help if you're having some trouble, in between the ears. I'm actually a huge proponent. I've gotten help. So go get help. But going to get help is different than sabotaging your physical health and declaring it's for your mental health, or saying that your mental health is at an all-time high because you've just for some reason made peace with the fact that you have sabotaged yourself once again physically and are shortening your lifespan. It's really rough, and there's two sides to this coin. There's a side of that to my coin as well. I'm not going to go into it here because that side of my coin is significantly less common than the side of the coin we just discussed. So that's kind of a rough one, guys. But yeah, that's the Bobby Thompson rant. And I had to have one of those rough conversations. I called it rough. My client looked at me dead square in the Zoom call, stone cold, and said, "Hey, I needed that. I love it. I'm here for it." So my last one paid off, which is great because I really like that client a lot. I see a lot of unrecognized potential in him when it comes to his physicality. So it worked out well then, but he wasn't the first client I've had that with, but he was the first client that I really kind of came out the gate with a little rough. Like, all right, we got to talk about this. Like, that's not your mental health. That's self-harm. So it's all different, and we all need to do what we need to do to be happy. And I believe being happy is very important. However, I just don't think happiness is truly located at the bottom of a gallon of ice cream. By the way, I've eaten a gallon of ice cream, almost a whole gallon of ice cream myself, at least far enough down to get to the bottom and know that happiness wasn't there or anywhere for like the next 2 weeks. So won't talk about that. But, so in terms of what I am doing with my training, things are feeling great. So I've been running now, excuse me, or I call it an athletic shuffle because I really can't run effectively or correctly with the screws in my feet. So the reason, sorry, I didn't think this through, logistics failure, sorry guys. So the reason I've started running is because, or jogging, but it'll be, usually it's 300 yards 3 times a week prior to training, and then a 500 yard as of this or next week we'll bump to 500. So as that's happening, the cardiovascular benefits really aren't that great, considering that I'm breaking this up into usually 100-yard chunks, maybe a little bit more. And I'm only being, like, I know just because you stop moving, your heart rate doesn't immediately come down, but I'm only moving from, I would say 38, my first one's probably about 50 seconds because I'm stiff and getting moving again, but between 38 and 50 seconds at a time. It's not a lot. So actually what I'm looking to do is maybe start to develop some of the underdeveloped muscles I have below the knee and on the inside of my legs, being my adductors and then the supporting muscles of my calf and down towards the bottom of my feet. Because I've got screws in my feet and doctors told me not to run when I was done running when I was like 16 or 17. Haven't listened super well, but I definitely leaned in hard on, okay, this is a limited time situation. I need to be aware and make sure I don't rough these fusions up. Well, over the years, I've done nothing but make them worse. And I'm still kicking ass and taking names when I have a good day. Sidebar, last 2 contests. So I've started running and staying focused on where I'm planting my foot and working on the pushing off of each individual leg on the turn in hopes that I can stimulate some strength, some growth, and maybe some durability in my adductors and my calves that will hopefully relay over into movements like deadlift, push press, carrying. Faster feet would be nice, but I don't really see that one happening. So that's why my training kind of looks the way it does. I'm truly enjoying what I'm doing. Body weight's come down a little bit. I've jumped back on my diet relatively hard as I'm cooking eggs and pulling out Greek yogurt now. Nathan has me on a pretty long leash. I don't want my voice is cracked there. Sorry, guys. Nathan has me on a pretty long leash. I'm back on target, but when I'm on a long, like, when I say I'm on a long leash, I did the math. At my worst since being home from the Arnold, when I was really off diet, I was still hitting 88 to 90% of my diet, usually. There were some days where I would fall 2 meals short, but the average day I was still hitting 90%. If we broke everything down, I was still hitting like 88 to 90% of my needed foods. I was just adding little things here and there and then taking advantage of different sources of nutrients. So, that being said, 90%, I blossomed up to about 336 pounds. I wasn't training a whole lot, just I was letting my concussion heal, and then a couple other injuries I was letting kind of recover nicely. From there, moving forward into training, I didn't hit the first week right out the gate very hard. It was get moving, and I'm still not coming out the gate very hard. My body was stagnant for a long period of time, probably the longest period of time it has been since I've started doing strongman. And that was after, after Arnold not getting my Worlds invite for whatever reason that may have come. There are a few logical ones, some not so logical. Um, but so that meant I needed to warm up into training slowly to get my body reacclimated to moving quickly. And there have definitely been some new aches and pains from that. But I'm feeling good. Right now my body weight's probably about 330. I've lost a little bit of weight as my diet's gotten back on track. So getting the veggies in, moving a bit more during training. I'm noticing that with the added daily athletic shuffle or running, I'm sleeping better. That's pretty cool. But guys, anyways, I'm going to bounce off here. Breakfast with Bobby. This one wasn't too exciting. Hopefully it helped, and there was another tile. God bless it. I just need to fix those for him. But eggs are done. Toast is about to be done. Greek yogurt's out. I'm going to put my stuff away, clean up, get some grubbing, and get to working for the day. So please, guys, go eat something. You're getting skinny, and thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm getting back to normal now, guys.